Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Transformation Mondays, a series where we explore how to transform our visuals and also our workflows. Ooh, replay. All right. Our workflows, which is really, really vital to my process also. So we're going to be exploring Photoshop today and also the most latest AI features in Photoshop that I have been incorporating within my post-editing photography workflow. I think it's also important to continuously optimize your design post editing workflow as much as you can as everything continues to evolve. In the meantime, say hello on the chat. I already see a few people here. We see some familiar faces, some familiar usernames, which have the coolest names. General Kenobi, Alessandra Lopez, and Voodoo Val. Hi, Voodoo Val. It's nice to see you on the chat. I see the YouTube chat up here too. So say hello there. Let me know where you're joining from and what time of day is it where you are at. For me, it's I think it's time for lattes. I have a decaffeinated latte right now because I'm not so good with the real coffee, but with this optimizing workflow, I'm hoping to have some more of this because I'll have more time saved for me and my me time, right? So a little bit about me. My name is Cyn Lagos. I am a visual mentor focused on graphic design, photography, and film. And I love exploring all these three different mediums, sometimes separately, sometimes together. Ultimately, the goal is to express yourself and to tell stories of your own from your own perspective, right? The medium may change, but the storytelling will forever continue. And that is my motto, to continue to experiment. So here's my website if you want to check it out and learn from some of the resources that I like to keep up this website with, some really good treasures in here. So continue saying hello on the chat and let me know what are you enjoying right now. I'm enjoying my latte. I'm a tea person, but my latte is going to work today. It's almost like, what is it, a placebo effect because it's decaffeinated, but we'll see, right? So let's begin experimenting. Let's jump into Photoshop. So we're here in Photoshop today. We're going to be optimizing our workflow with some of the portraits that I have here. This one's already been color corrected, but I thought I would bring it in because in the past, I've always seen some things that are obstructive to my scene, and oftentimes it feels a bit time consuming to approach them. So I tend to just leave them there and forget about them. And I'll use a different version of this image. So let's not do that, right? Let's recollect ourselves here and find easier ways to remove imperfections, obstructive visuals that we didn't want in the scene. Of course, here in this particular scene, I did have someone holding a prop in order to create this really interesting effect on her eye. And this was photographed with a Google Pixel 6, I think at the time. So excuse me, often experimenting with any tool I have in my hands at the moment. I think that's always kind of cool, and these cameras tend to be so amazing lately. So it worked out. It's a little bit on the grainy side, but these colors came out wonderful. So I would want to remove elements like this, of course, but then there's other things that are back here that are not really adding to my scene whatsoever. They're not there as a symbolic gesture. They're not there to represent the scene. So those are things that I like to keep in mind when I'm removing. So I like to begin by removing when it comes to AI features within Photoshop. There's so much to do that you almost have to compartmentalize them all, right? So let's begin by removing. Then we'll continue on to exploring expanding. And then finally, we'll continue into adding, right? Adding and substituting pixels. So let's begin by removing here. And I'll show you what I would typically use that was a bit more time consuming. Even if these are pretty fast, they're not lightning speed. We want lightning speed, right? So I think I will be replacing this traditional approach for removing elements. I would often go to content aware fill after making a selection. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it does tend to do the trick oftentimes, but I do find a few caveats. If it is a complex a complex texture or a complex area, it will have a bit of a struggle in trying to discern what you want to keep and what you want to remove. So you can see here that the result, let's see if we can open this up a little bit. Yeah. So you can see here that the result is a little jagged and strange. And of course, it borrowed some of the references that it auto selected. We can help it a little bit by removing the sweater, for example. That will not be a very good informative reference for for content aware fill to use. So things like that, of course, do help. We do need the artist to play a role here. But nevertheless, you'll see that it doesn't quite do the trick. And this is because it's a complex area, right? So I'm going to hit cancel here. What would happen if I do it to this area, right? So let's right click content aware fill, and that area did a great job because it's not as complex, so it's able to discern the pixels to substitute, is able to create some references here in auto, and it did just fine. And that was lightning speed. So I think I can preserve content aware fill for certain selections that are more simple and not for the more complex ones. For the more complex ones, I'll like to jump in here into this sweater slash sort of the back of the van here. Not symbolic, not important to our storytelling. Must go. Everything must go. No, just kidding. We're keeping the portrait. All right. So I would like to select my remove tool. Now, one thing I want you to pay attention to here is, in order to speed up your workflow at any given point, in order to truly transform how quickly you edit in your post-editing workflow, you must optimize your menu bar, right? Those are the little details. There's a saying that says, if you want to get good at something, you really have to really dial in your shoes. If you were a runner, you would dial in your shoes. You would go to that detail, right? So we're going to get detailed here. Let's go into the edit toolbar and that ellipsis, those three dots. And in here, you're going to find all of your menu. The menu that's already here, but we're going to customize it because we want control over our workflow. We want a tailored workflow, right? So I'm going to go into the letter J right here, and I find the remove tool. And the remove tool currently is 1, 2, 3, the fourth one. But I actually find myself using the remove tool most often because it is an AI-driven tool. So AI-driven tool number one, right? We're optimizing from traditional to the future. And the remove tool is smart enough to discern pixels around it in a different way because it's using the power of Adobe Sensei with AI, right? The power of Adobe Firefly. So let's move this over to the very top. We can move it in its own folder or within that same criteria folder, but just at the top, which means now when I press the letter J, it's going to select the remove tool, not the spot healing, none of these other ones that are cool, but not the one we want to prioritize. All right, now that we did that, let's make this selection. We dialed in our shoes. Let's make this selection. And I'm just gonna go in here and make what looks like a pretty chill selection. It wasn't too detailed, nothing intense. And you can see it says here, remove after selection. So immediately it made that edit, right? So I can continue editing here and you'll see that something else happens. There's a difference here. It may be called the remove tool, but don't let the name really just get you fixated on the concept of remove. It does substitute sections. So it will remove, but it will also add. So I was able to bring back this detail, this line right here that did not exist, right? I'm able to bring back elements so that it starts to look a little bit more natural to the optimal selection. So instead of erasing that area, it just made it a different shape, right? Something that it was able to understand was part of the context of my image. So that looks a lot better. And let's look at this line right here. Maybe we're able to repair this jagged line. So if I select it here, let's see how far we can go. Continue to go. And you can see it's really great at adding lines back in. So it's a little bit deceiving because you're like, it's a remove tool. What do you mean it's adding? But ultimately, it's substituting pixels. It's being able to discern the context of your image and know that we want to replace some things that we don't want in there and substitute it for something else that is related to our image. So in conjunction to that, I love using the remove tool as easily as possible, which is instead of making this sort of selection here by going in and selecting it like this, I simply circle it. And that's a pretty cool part of it. Wait, I don't think I circled it completely. There you go. Okay, so it's able to just understand that I wanted that area removed because I circled it. So that's an easier way for you to make those edits. And if you do any phone post editing on your phone, I know with my Google Pixel, I'm able to just circle things. And I love that UI, that like easy way of using my programs just transfers over, even though they're not exactly the same, but my mind is already thinking in that way. And I love that that works on my remove tool as well. So already this image, I think, looks far better than when we got started, right? This is how we were in the beginning. And I'm using the history panel here to go back to the past. And we have, with a few remove strokes, we're able to remove those obstructive elements, right? And Voodooval says, oh, it's really smoothing out nicely. Yeah, it's interesting how the remove tool can bring back those pixels and have a better way to discern what we want to bring back. So it becomes very intuitive, especially if you're using a tablet. I tend to find myself just brushing along and getting lost in the workflow, which is a great thing to be in, right? That's what's called a workflow. We enter the flow. So let's see if we have somebody else in the chat. Andrew Dickens says, what's Cyn up to tonight? Oh, tonight. So you just told me it's nighttime. For me, it's actually only 3 o'clock. So it's my afternoon latte. So cheers, y'all. Okay, so let's do one more thing here. So far we've removed in our order of operations, we've removed. And now let's see if we can maybe do a little bit of expanding in this image, right? So in order to do that, you guys might be familiar with our recent developments with AI within Photoshop. We have generative fill and generative expand leading the way towards these new emerging technologies and features that we can use now as photographers, right? So I'm going to be utilizing both of them. First, we're gonna expand. So we're gonna do that by selecting the crop tool. And already we have a visual of what can happen. I love all of these little helpers. They're like little Easter eggs that happen all across Photoshop that teach you a little bit more about your tools. We're gonna find them all across. So let's see, we can select this to go maybe up to here. Something about cropping that's really peculiar is that with cropping, you want to be able to have this rule of third hit the spot, hit that cross point where you want the point of interest. So maybe for me, it's the eye. Maybe it's entirely her, right? So we can have it like this and still keep the sky. Now you'll notice that here on the left-hand side, we have a transparent background that is not quite generative expand. In order to enable it, we need to go into this little tab right here, transparent default. So that's our regular cropping tool, what we're familiar with. Generative expand or content aware fill. So, hey, let's give content aware fill a try and hit that check mark and see what happens, right? Oftentimes we want to do some cropping, some expanding of our images to change our minds about the final ratio. And you can see here, content aware fill, it's too complex. It wasn't the image for content aware fill. So it's okay. We have yet another option, and I'm just gonna hit that letter C to optimize my speed even more so by remembering my shortcuts, and go into generative expand this time, right? So generative expand was sort of born out of just the inspiration of creators. Creators were using generative fill as a way to expand and change their images ratio. So Photoshop listened, Adobe listened, and they said, let's include it. Let's make it intuitive. So we have it included within the cropping tool. So now when I expand, say maybe around here, and hit that check mark, it's going to begin to generate something. And in here we have an Easter egg. You can perform multiple actions simultaneously, such as cropping in. Okay. Ooh, that's interesting. Now our model is in a brand new landscape, and imagination has been turned on and is super cool. But what's even cooler for me when it comes to just developing these new ratios is that I don't get to just spend this time generating one option. I have 3 options available in that one click. So I waited a little bit. I didn't wait a whole lot, to be honest, right? We were able to chat. We were able to see an Easter egg. That's what I'm calling them now because I learn from them all the time. And we were able to get 3 options. And if we want to generate one more, all this time we were able to generate new pixels without requesting a prompt, requesting anything specific. It's just by simply expanding our crop size. So of course it's taking the context of our image as reference to be able to create new scenes. I think my favorite was this one. This one was really, really cool. This was actually taken in Texas, and this looks a little bit like Texas, a little bit. So I think this can work out, right? All right, so back to my layer here. Okay, so I still have my working file. These files are separated, and I'm just gonna merge this here for a new option. So it's Shift, Option, Command, E. You can do it. It's like I play the piano on my keyboard sometimes. All right, so let's see. Alessandra Lopez says, I love the purple. And let's see what we have here in YouTube. I always forget about YouTube. I'm trying not to forget about y'all, okay? Yes, so the AI tools are now integrated within Photoshop, not just Photoshop beta, but Photoshop, our general app. So it's currently finally out of beta, which means it's been optimized, it's been tried and tested, and now we're gonna have it available for commercial use, which means we can use it for our businesses, and we can expand our imaginations and actually print them and think of different ways to funnel out photography, right? Like in this new age, we're about to enter 2024. Isn't that wild? Where did the year go? Did you have a wonderful year? I hope you did. I feel like I've hit so many milestones this year. So let me know in the chat what milestone you're proud of this year. The first one that comes to mind. No cheating, okay? So let's see. I'm going to select the sky here, and I'm going to use my pen tool because I actually like my pen tool quite a lot. This is not going to be a difficult selection. I'm just going to do a quick curve right there. Nothing too crazy. There was a time that being good at making a good selection was a skill. And now it's still good, you know. You can always have more skills in your tool belt, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary for some of these steps, which is used to be really time consuming when I first started using Photoshop. So, okay, I made a rough selection here. I'm going to make a selection. Let's see, multitasking brain. Make the selection, 0 radius, feather radius, 0 is fine. And now in our contextual bar, if you don't see that contextual bar available, you're going to find it within Windows, and you're going to see here contextual taskbar. Now the contextual taskbar is not exclusive for generative fill and generative expand and AI related. It often shifts. It's a shift changing tool, which is always thinking about the tool that you're using. So at the moment, since I made a selection, it has an understanding I may want to use generative fill, and that's why it's available here. So I'm going to select generative fill there, and then I have my prompt bar. It's the moment where we get to tell Photoshop what to do. Quite literally, we get to vocalize it. Like, hey, that would be cool, right? We can just like say it with our voice from afar, from across the living room. That would be nice. Next thing, maybe. I don't know. All right, so in here, I think these clouds are okay. I was using a phone, so it is a little bit harder to control white balance. It is hard to control the exposure without underexposing my model, right? The light was behind her. So there's a degree of control that we have with our phones, but not the same as using a manual feature in your full frames or your DSLR. So post editing is going to save us when we're using tools like this during production. So I want to play around, allow my imagination to play here. And I just wanted to read a quick thing here before I say that. I was reading this morning. I found it really peculiar. Let's see here if I can share it with you. So I was reading this. This is my favorite book ever for photography, ever. Okay. And I always just open it and I find myself in a brand new, it's almost like a case study per photo. But there was this one sentence that really got to me today. It made me think about the way we're adding pixels to our images in this new modern era or futuristic era as we enter a new world of post-editing with AI generated images, right? So it says here, for some artists, their photographic work needs to be given a stable and unchangeable presentation. For others, the image is simply a potential which can manifest in any number of ways. Any number of ways. I love the fact that those two may coexist. There isn't a one way or another way, but there's room within this book of traditional photographers, wonderful, wonderful people. They inspire me every morning. Right before I even have my tea, they inspire me. And there's room for both, right? So if you want your photographic work to remain the way that you shot it out of your camera, that's definitely a wonderful way to be a storyteller. And if you want to create new modifications and do things like this, like adding elements and adding prompts out of your brain and your imagination, compositing new worlds, that's also an option, right? So food for thought there. I read it this morning. I knew I was going to share it with y'all, with the chat here. Okay, so I love how the chat somehow ends up talking about Star Wars. But of course, General Kenobi says, I want to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi. This is a bit like that. It's giving me that strength. Like I have some control of the Force. My dog's name is Tobi-Wan Kenobi. So I really like your name too. Yeah. Okay. So back to this. Let's add, right? So we've expanded, we've used the remove tool, powered by AI, we've expanded, powered by AI, and now we're going to be adding pixels, or substituting the sky. So I want to pick on my photography brain and ask myself, what prompt can I ask here? I can ask for a subject, like I can ask for clouds, right? That is a noun, that is a subject, it is a thing, right? But what about those clouds? What if I say I want something blurred? So I'm trying to think, as a photographer, what would I do in my production, during production? Maybe I would have, opened up that aperture. Maybe I would have lowered my shutter speed. Okay, lowered my shutter speed. Maybe we want motion blur, right? Maybe we have a very windy sky because she's wearing a hoodie, so it might be a windy sky. So now we're adding some drama in here. So motion blurred clouds. We can even say motion blurred clouds. Let's add some color, right? Colorful clouds. All right, we have 4 words, and none of them include a request to add, remove. It already understands that. No need for fluff. All right, let's hit that generate. And here we have, to remove content, try generating without a prompt. And we'll find the selection based on the surroundings. We did that. We already knew that. All right, look at this. Whoa. Like, what just happened? I blinked my eyes and this happened. This is awesome. And it's interesting because it can be a foundation for anything. It doesn't have to be the final touch, but it just starts to get your brain to thinking, okay, cool, I can do this with a phone photo. Next time I take a photo, maybe I leave some space for the sky so I can come into post editing and reimagine that world all together, right? You can start to conceptually think of your images. Hi, George. Hi, everyone. Anyone who's joining, definitely let us know in the chat, what time of day are you joining us from? And what is your most proudest milestone so far of 2023? Yeah, so this is super cool. What if I don't want to add colorful? Let's say I don't. Let's not put that in there. It might still generate colorful because we're generating from a previous one. I'm gonna hit it again, and each time I get 3 options, 3 variations to pick from. Wow, that is, if you wanted some drama, that is definitely dramatic, right? So then we have some horizontal. And notice I did not ask for a vanishing point kind of blurred, but it did give me these 3 different options here. We have like a vanishing point, we have a bit of a swirl, like a radial blur, and we have a horizontal blur. So this is where AI can be really, really powerful for your new transformed workflow. It helps you. It's your assistant. It's assisting you. It's thinking for you sometimes, but it really is based on you as a foundation. So it thought of these options for me. But we began with the conceptual thinking here. So it's a wonderful way to explore the photos in your archives. I've been doing that quite a lot lately, just exploring photos I had in the past, but I didn't quite know what to do with them. Maybe I hadn't thought of their potential just yet. So I'm loving these photos. I think I'm gonna save this file. Usually I don't save while I'm on stream, but I really like them, so. That's the thing with generating images. I might not get this result next time. This is exclusively for this time in our stream, and so that's really special, right? Like it's almost like roll of the dice. What are we gonna get at any given point? Yeah, happy Monday, y'all. I know Mondays can be a bit tricky. We have so many expectations, but I think I've shifted that mindset. I've learned to take it slow on Mondays and prep on Sundays. Is that crazy? I love Sundays. They're so chill. Okay. So let's pull another image here, right? So we had that really cool image, and let's see if we can pull a different image for us to explore. And we're going to do a little bit of post editing in one of these two. So let's open this one. And again, it's no longer in beta, so I don't have to worry about opening it there. Okay. So we have some really cool things going on here. When I open this image, this is not an image taken with a phone. This image was taken with, I believe, a Canon. Oh, it's up here. Canon EOS 60. My first love, basically. I've been able to explore the world with this camera. If you can take anything from today, is exhaust the equipment you have and explore the new possibilities that we are being introduced to, right? So we're here in the camera raw that belongs to Photoshop. And I jumped immediately into the masking options. So the masking options are also powered by AI. They are very intelligent in discerning the subject, the sky, the background, right? So it's been learning what kind of backgrounds exist out there. It's been learning what kind of subjects exist out there in order to make a pre-selection for you so you don't have to, right? So we're optimizing our speed. We're making more room for lattes. And it's just so important, right? So let's select our subject here. Already, it gives me an option for people. So beneath here, I can have people selected, right? So I have person number 1. And within this, I can select even more detailed selections. So I have facial, body, eyebrows. And you might think, well, what am I going to do with these selections? You can choose to change the exposure if we didn't have a really good chance to expose with external lighting. You can say, you know what, her hair was kind of in the back underneath this house thing, so it didn't get a lot of detailing. So I might want to make that selection, and that's the way to think about this. If not, you can select the entire person and do some edits there. Maybe her lips, the makeup artist, we couldn't afford it, or the makeup artist left early, whatnot. Then we might want to make some options here for her lips. So let's select a few here. Let's do hair, lips, and the dress could be a little bit under. It's too bright, I think. It's like I overdid it in that section. So I think it's one of those things, you can't really see in that tiny screen. It happens. Post editing is the place to save these decisions. So we have person's clothes, person's hair, person's lips. So let's go into the hair. We said we would decrease that. So expose it a little bit. So we're working with shadows here. So let's expose that hair a little bit. I like to, we talk about megapixels. We talk about having our subjects in focus. What if they're not? One way to bring back that illusion of focus or that illusion of megapixels and details is bringing back that information that is hidden within our shadows, bringing back those textures so they're like clearly visible. So the viewer, when they see it, whether you have this printed, whether you have it online, they're gonna immediately feel this sense of separation, this sense of details, and that's gonna feel like it's sharper, right? It's in focus. So it's a small trick of illusion that really always works out for most of my images. Okay, so I think that does that for the hair. Let's go into the lips. Did I select that there? Yes, I did. And in the lips, I can do maybe a little bit more saturation. Let's zoom in. So I can do a little bit more saturation. Maybe there was a little bit of lip balm. Depends, these are creative choices. You can choose to have no makeup at all. You can choose to have, a little bit of blush, a little bit of tinted skin because we're out in the sun and you want that feeling. You want the feeling of translating that it's a hot day, whatever it may be, right? So these are the moments where you can choose those specific areas and shift and make those changes. So I can just simply increase the saturation, and already her lips are more tinted, right? We can also change the lip color if we wanted to something pinker or something like that. I notice a different selection is also selected out here, so I'm gonna leave it to that. And let's see if we do the clothes. You can see the clothes are really overexposed, and I don't like that. So let's bring those highlights down. Oh, I'm selected the wrong one. Maybe bring down the exposure a little bit. Nothing too crazy. All right, I think I'm ready to open it now that we've explored our mask here and we created a little bit of tint. We brought back some texture. We lowered the exposure. Okay, doing good so far. So let's do some cropping here. I do want to remove order of ops. I think about this a lot because it's really easy to get lost in all of the potential features that we have available to us now that we're not accustomed to. So I often think remove, expand, add, REA. That's just something that helps me structure myself so that when I'm wondering where should I begin, I know I'm not going to begin by adding an element. And that's just for me because I come from traditional post editing where we exclusively do correction first and then we do styling, right? So color, if you want to do any corrections to the highlights, to the color, to anything. And then afterwards, we can do something out of bounds, like styling our shadows and styling the color palette or color hues and tonalities, right? That's the styling element. So I think it helps to organize yourself in these AI features as well. So I'm going to begin by removing some of these things here. I don't really like this background as much. It's not doing much for me. So let's say I want to remove that. I can definitely do that by making a selection, right? I can do a quick selection here. Nothing crazy. Remove that selection. Didn't mean to do that. Generative fill. And we can right remove or we can simply hit generate. And already it's telling us to avoid instructions like add, fill, make, change. They're not necessary, right? We could use it and it will still do it, but why do that and save the time? Okay, so when this happens, I do run into this sometimes. I think that is simply a mistake. So sometimes I have to re-upload the file. It's like crosswire. It's like, oh, wait, is this a commercial photo? No, it's my photo. So let's see if it generates it now that I unlocked it. So a bit of troubleshooting here is always helpful. Anytime we run into some troubleshooting in a stream is always a nice little test. All right, so let's do that. Let's not reopen it. We're gonna move on to our other option and hit the letter J and use our handy dandy remove tool. Okay, so I just want to make that back completely black. So that way it's not so distracting to her. It's little ways that we can strengthen our image and remove distractions. I could have kept it. It's definitely an option. It's definitely something that wasn't obtrusive. It was part of the texture, but maybe I have to kind of weigh whether it's helping or distracting, whether the black is a little bit better. Sometimes I love having a black background so that my subject stands out completely. So what is it? Oh, Voodoo says, I really love the purple bus and the blue sweater. I really did too. I saved that file, so we're good. Oh, okay. Let's see here. I think I lost my Behance chat. Gotta find y'all. You're in here somewhere. Okay, there you are. Okay. All right. Whew. Oh, by the way, just got a nice my podcast hat that I'm sporting today. Today I'm getting a lot of goodies in the mail, and I don't know. I don't know what I did. It's not Christmas yet, but everything's arriving at the same time, and it's great. All right, so let's see here on generative expand. I want to straighten this horizon here, so we can do that. And you'll notice that these edges happen here on each side, right? Because we basically tilted our scene. But because we have generative expand selected, this is going to help us in filling that space without having to worry about cropping in and losing some of that detail that we already had. There you go. So now we have a straight horizon and we don't have those strange edges, right? So if we wanted to, we can also continue to expand this scene. Now, I don't really, maybe we can go classic and do a square, right? 1-to-1 ratio. And let's hit generate. When you don't want to generate something, commands like remove, no, or without are helpful. Okay, cool. Good to know. All right, look at that. So that just creates new spaces here for us for our 1-to-1 ratio. And I think that's really helpful. I think I like this one a little bit more. Will it take away? Will it add? I don't know. I think sometimes it requires a few revisits for us to really know if it's going to work. I definitely know that I wanted to remove some of the things that I saw here. I didn't like this detail here. I think it's from the electric lines. So let's see how it does by removing that. And mind you, this is full of texture, right? So it's full of squares. If we gave that job to anything else, it might be clearly visible. So it's kind of nice to do small selections too, I notice. All right, so we're going to move on from doing that, and then we're going to go into a bit of a color correction, right, while staying here in Adobe Photoshop. So one of the things I like to do is Shift-Command-E, and I'm going to go down here and go into photo. We can do photo filter, right? So if we were to go into color lookup, we can double click that. There it is. Is it color lookup? Here it is. Okay. Hey, properties, come back to me. There you are. All right. So under color lookup, we have these film color palettes that I love so much. So if you're a fan of Fujifilm, if you're a fan of Kodak, you can have these really beautiful film like presets that are already within Photoshop. And I think this is a bit of a hidden feature. So I love being able to jump in here, potentially using it as a baseline, and then continuing to edit it in Lightroom or anywhere else. But sometimes I step in here just to remind me what some of these films used to do, whether they had a different kind of blue, a different type of shadow color palette. Look how drastically different that was from this one to this one. That is pretty different, and nevertheless very cohesive, right? And I think I would be happy with this alone. And of course we can change the color mode here. So we're in Photoshop, and color modes are such a big part of Photoshop. We can do maybe a soft light and then lower that opacity so we can determine how much we use, right? With a lot of these tools, where in real life for doing my hair and makeup. Oh, I wish a lot of these tools were in real life for doing my makeup. Oh my gosh. Hey, maybe all can happen, right? These days I've been really surprised by a lot of the developments that happen so fast. If we put it out there, it might be possible, right? Okay, so So let's see. Let's jump into another image. I think that I feel happy with that filter. It's one of my favorites. Fuji Eterna 250D, and it's lowered. So I have it to 23%. And I like that. So far, we've done some straightening with AI, expanding with AI. We did smart masking with AI and some remove tool post editing exercises here. So we have those options, and we haven't even been the time within the stream. So that tells you a lot about how much you can do if you wanted to continue working on your post editing for photography within Photoshop. So let's see, let's open a different image here and see how we can try to approach the same order operations with a new scene. So let's open this image, which we were familiar with. I think I like this one here. So now this one, just by visibly looking at it, I'm thinking, well, okay, there's some options here. Let's conceptually think. I can add some elements to the sky because the sky is so easy to grab. I can mask her and lower those highlights, right? You can see that I can remove these lines. So let's see if we test ourselves and attempt to do that as fast as possible, right? So let's do here subject selection. Okay, we have the subject selected. We're gonna lower that exposure. And we maybe bring up those shadows so they're not as harsh. And lower the highlights a little bit. Okay, that looks a little bit more natural than our initial image, and hit open. Okay, we have a lot of room here on the right side, but we have very little room here on the left-hand side. So I might want to change that by doing a little bit of cropping here and make it feel like she's more in the center. Having generative expand selected, check mark. Okay, we're good to go. Oh, Andrew is sharing with us. Can you tell Cyn my proudest moment of 2023 was finding Adobe Live? Oh, come on. That you're definitely awesome. I'm so glad that you found Adobe Live. Watching these live streams of my interest and keep my interest in TV and editing. That's wonderful. I'm so happy you found us, not just because it's us, and of course we're cool like that, but just kidding. But also because I can really echo that feeling. You know, finding a nice community that does the same thing that you do in the same headspace, it's pretty special. I think the World Wide Web sometimes can be really wide and kind of hard to find your own little nook in the internet, right? But finding a space where you can both educate yourself, feel inspired, get to know new workflows, new tools, and stay with that fuel, that fire, right? We sometimes lose it. So I am so happy. I'm so happy, Andrew, that you're here. Okay, let me use the remove tool to remove these lines and select this, right? So that's an interesting thing that just happened there, right? I cannot make you can see there, it's telling me I can't remove anything because I have the generative expand layer selected, which is why in order of operations, I find it too important to do removing first before anything else. So let's remove here some of these clothing lines. Clothing lines. Can you imagine? They're not clothing lines, they're electric lines. That looks so much cleaner already just by removing that, right? Such a beautiful sky. It's a beautiful portrait. I had somebody holding a reflector and that light just looks wonderful. Let's remove that. And I think I might want to also, why is it having such a, oh, you know why? Again, order of operations. I have this file at the top, right? Because we expanded prior. So let's Shift Command E and do that remove right on top of that. That looks so much better. What else did I say I was going to do to this image? I think I want to strain the horizon for sure. So we're going to go in here and squeeze in and really let this image shine without all of the strange obstructions that we notice. We may not know how to say them, but we notice them. We know that the sky is a little bit tilted. We're wondering, is she falling? Is she in a good space, right? In video editing, that's often used to make it feel like the scene is uncomfortable. And so we don't want that to translate into our scene when in reality she's happy and serene, right? So let's use a nice color LUT here for this image too. And pick one of maybe the Kodak options. Ooh, that's really pretty. I think I'm a big fan of this one. That looks really nice. And maybe we can add an element here. So we can use a different kind of selection. So we can use a square selection, a circle selection to create a different generation. So if you make a selection based on the thing that you're imagining, it's going to give you better results essentially. So let's do sunbeam, sunbeam. All right, hit generate there. Need more room, explore, generative, expand. I always like reading them now. I'm like, don't go too fast. I want to read this. All right, so this is a little bit more artificial. I don't quite want that. So let's do generative fill, sun. And generative fill works with 100 languages. So if you have a different language, there was a time that it was only available for English. And thankfully I had that, but I can imagine that can make it really complicated. So let's write sol, right? Sun in Spanish, and let's see what happens. I think maybe I might make a moon. It has an easier time with moon, right? This is continuing to develop. AI is continuing to be educated. Wow, it's really not wanting to do it. Moon. Come on. All right. Agnes Ram says, thank you for the balance, and would be great for folks if you share your Behance and YouTube links also. Oh yeah, surely I will do that. Look, moon. It was meant to be a moon, folks. It was meant to be a moon. That looks so beautiful. Okay, cool. Let me see. Hit a full frame to see that scene. Wonderful. So we were able to work on different images and explore the new options that we have for our post-editing workflows. And hopefully we continue to find new ways to transform our workflows for post-editing and photography. If you want to find more resources, go to my website, go to the section called classes, where you'll be able to keep up with my latest stream, my latest courses. I have a Skillshare class that I just published, which has been so much fun. Again, I mentor visuals, exploring graphic design, photography, and film. And this one is a strong passion of mine. It's exploring graphic design and photography. And they communicate together. I've used them throughout my entire career. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful benefit to boosting all of my work, right? So definitely check this out. I drop in a lot of resources, and keep up with me on socials. I'll love to say hello. I don't reply quite as fast as I used to, but I always try. So definitely say hello. It's always going to be me. And thank you for being so cool on the chat. You're always the best. And thank you, Vuruval, for being on the chat too. See you next time.